Good morning, friends. I think I should begin with because we are not going to wait for a long time with the students. Today, we are going to begin with our next important topic of third unit, that is reader response theory or reader oriented theories. Imagine for a moment that a stream that runs near a mountain, all around there are bright colors, beautiful garden, vegetation, bird song, unpolluted air, and laughter of children. A common painting that we used to draw when any teacher at our school age used to ask make a drawing, and we used to have a mountain and river or a stream flowing, the two trees, sun is coming out of that mountains, birds are flying, children are playing, there is only one hut. This is a very common picture that usually as a students we used to draw when somebody asks us to make a painting. Now we have made this side of valley. What is the other side of valley? This landscape which you made is a text, for example. Now who created this text? Who is the author? Who is the person who designed, who think that yes, this is how a painting can be done? Does it contain any author signature? That after every painting you will find out there is an author signature below that painting. If there is no viewer or reader, how does one know to appreciate it? How does one understand and appreciate that particular text? Is the perceiver or the reader is just an idle viewer, a subject just receiving passively the beauty of seeing or the beauty of the text? Does the text even exist without any reader? Or can we say that beauty lies in the eyes of beholder, the interpreter or the reader, and that without the viewer, there is nothing called beauty? Even if there is a divine music, we need a listener, or in Indian term, you can call it as a rasik. Otherwise, you are unable to get the meaning of that divine music that you are using it. We require a reader, we require a listener for that music to appreciate. Or is it an interactive process? Something that is depend upon the object. It depends upon the beholder also as an active participant. Now, where the beauty lies is the question. Beauty lies in the eyes of beholder. Where the beauty lies is the question, my friends. And each theory gives prominence to one aspect or other. If you admire the creator or the author of that particular text without giving much thought to the reader or spectator, you are classicist then. If you are giving only admiring the author or the creator, you are going to be labeled as classicist. But if you believe that there is no beauty without a beholder, you are a reader response theorist. Please understand this difference. If you are simply admiring the author, admiring the creator, you are the classicist, because classicists used to admire the only creator, the writer, the author. But if you are admiring the other side of it, that is the reader or spectator or rasik, which I said, then you are the reader response theorist. The word itself, the title itself suggests us that this is what we call it as reader response. This is what is reader response that we use to understand it. Now, there are certain questions, my friend, when we talk about reader response. One can ask whether a beholder can look at an ugly object or a disturbing scene, and after looking at that disturbing scene or ugly object, still he can say that it is beautiful, even so many others are saying that it is not beautiful. To say beautiful by everybody, does we or do we need a group consensus, or do we need a community agreement to say that something is beautiful or something is ugly? Or is it a matter of individual's opinion? What exactly is the reader response? For me, it is ugly, but if you don't feel that it is ugly, then how can you call it as ugly? Because if you say that community agreement is required, consensus is required to call something beauty, something ugly, do the individual response having certain value or not? That is very easy to say that it is the reader who breathes the meaning, or who finds out, who gets the meaning out of the text. See what Roland Barthes declared. Roland Barthes declared the death of author. The author is of no importance. According to him, the reader is a creator because he used to find out his own meanings. He used to get his own meanings. But again, there are a whole lot of questions to be answered before we give any sort of privilege to the reader. We have to answer various questions before giving the importance to the reader. From a deconstructionist perspective, if you say that if you make reader at the center, and we are only shifting the center from one transcendental center, that is author, to another, that is reader. We are shifting the center from author to reader. Second possibility is that there are readers and readers. So again, the one from one reader, it will shift to another reader. We have to answer these so many questions before we enter into the understanding of exactly what reader response theory or reader oriented theories speak about. A reader can be an ordinary naive reader. Excuse me, friends, I'm having a call from Honorable Vice Chancellor. So there need to be a lot of questions to get answered. A reader can be an ordinary or naive reader without any kind of background. A reader can be highly sensitive, sophisticated, with a right kind of background. A reader can be superior or super reader with a lot of literary competence. A reader can also be the author who produced the text. Nowadays, you can say a reader can be a virtual reader, as you are the virtual students. There can be a virtual reader. One imagined by the author at the time of producing the text. The intended reader, a reader can be an ideal reader with a perfect insight. A reader can be biased reader also, not essential that he should understand everything comfortably. In fact, my friends, no reader can be ideologically neutral. A reader can be a prejudiced one or a contained one. Thus, there are all kinds of reader. Then the question comes, who is the reader we have in our mind while talking about reader who brings out meaning to the text? Because if these much categories of readers are there, who is the reader we have in our mind? Who is actually bringing out the meaning to the text? Another question is the role of the text that triggers the response of the reader. What sort of particular part of the text that triggers the reader's response? Umberto Eco, one of the very famous thinker, in a book written in 1979, points out in a book titled The Role of the Reader. Umberto Eco points out that all texts do not invite the same kind of reaction and collaboration, even in one kind of reader. Not all the text can make the reader to simply react. It cannot react always. Reader is not reacting always. That is what Umberto Eco is saying. That it cannot, if you give the reader, if you're giving everything to one reader, then it is not possible for that reader to have the same kind of thing. For example, the same kind of reader reads the comic strip, the comics, or the detective story, and Shakespeare, and James Joyce. When reading all those things, he's reading it in different ways. You cannot read comics as the detective story or Shakespeare as James Joyce. When you are reading in a very different way, all the things. That means the text invites, the text invites from the readers that how to do with this, how to deal with all those things. And for that, we have to understand the whole idea of reader response theories or reader response criticism or reader oriented theories. Reader response criticism as a critical approach to literature can be seen in part of reaction to formalism and new criticism. It is a kind of reaction, as I said. If you are giving preference to the author, then you are called as classicist. If you are giving preference to the readers, you are going to be called as reader-oriented theorist. Now, why all those things appear? Why all those things are coming? Because it brings the importance of the reader in meaning-making process of literary works. As I said, most of the time, critics neglected the role of the reader. Critics neglected the role of the reader for a very long time in the name of objective and impersonal analysis. Classical notions of fixed meanings and a kind of objective interpretation always kept readers and contexts away from the process of meaning making. It used to keep all those things away. It keeps all the readers away from meaning making process. Somehow, if you look in romanticism, that contexts and readers were taken into account in literary analysis for a small time. But from mid 19th century onwards, the focus shifted back to objective and disinterested analysis, as this was advocated by Matthew Arnold's literary theory, touchstone method, or Eliot's literary theory in early 20th century. They almost advocated the objective and disinterested analysis. The strictly textual analysis was practiced. Reader response theories, contrary to the dominant critical stance which was held for several years, it showed readers in the act of interpretation and thus the relevance of context in the meaning process. Reader response, my friends. So, reader response criticism is based on the ideas drawn from phenomenology and hermeneutics. Phenomenology, PHENOMENOLOGY, is the study of how we understand the world. Phenomenology is the study of how we understand the world, and hermeneutics is the theory of textual interpretation. Hermeneutics is the theory of textual interpretation, especially those texts dealing with human acts, products, and life. They are interrelated and involve mainly the analysis of perception and interpretation. They are dealing with these two theories are interrelated and involve mainly the analysis of perception and interpretation of the world and the human life. Phenomenology deals with psychology and social theory. As a movement in philosophy, my friends, it began in late 19th century, and the founder of this movement was German theorist Edmund Husserl. Edmund Edmund Husserl, Husserl. Edmund Husserl, who was the founder of this movement. Now, if you see very carefully, my friends, that what Husserl proposed, Husserl proposed the real aim of philosophical study is not to examine the external objects in the world, but the process by which the object appears to the mind of perceiver. What Edmund Husserl proposed, I'll repeat once again, Edmund Husserl proposed that the real aim of philosophical study is not to examine the external objects in the world, but the process by which the object appears to the mind, conscious mind, for example. How the objects appear to the mind of the perceiver. He even stated that the objects in the world are as they appear, and perceiver gives meaning to it. If you see in Husserl's philosophy, the perceiver's role is very important in determining the meanings of the objects. It leads to a simple view that human mind is the center of the origin of all the meaning. Human mind is central to get all the meanings. This is what Edmund Husserl talked about. Another important philosopher who talked about it is Martin Heidegger. Martin, Martin, Heidegger, Heidegger. Martin Heidegger, a German philosopher and Husserl's student, he rejected Husserl's view that the perceiver alone projects the meaning onto the things of the world. He rejects the view of Husserl. He made it clear that while the perceiver's conscious mind projects the things of the world, at the same time, the world also affects his mind. It is not one-sided process. The mind affects and is affected in turn. Heidegger further explained that consciousness is situated in a certain place and time, and this situatedness always affects our understanding of the world. In which situation you are stuck up, this understanding changes your perception. That's why Martin Heidegger said that we can never have a view of the world free from the references of time and place. Time and place also affect your understanding. Time and place also affect your uh, meaning which you get from that particular object. Now, Heidegger's this point of view affected another German theorist, Hans Georg Gadamer, HANS, Hans dash Georg Georg Gadamer Gadamer. Now, he applied Heidegger's situational approach to literary theory in Truth and Method, written in 1975. He argued that literary works do not appear in the world with one final meaning, that we have discussed a lot when we talked about this in post structuralism, we talked about in deconstruction. But what Hans Georg Gadamer says, that the meaning is decided by the historical situation and the interpreter. You'll find, my friends, Gadamer denied that literary works are having inherent meaning. He declined this fact that every literary work is having or carrying its own meaning in itself. And that's why you'll find out Gadamer denied that literary works had an inherent meaning and brought the interpreter and his historical situation in focus. Gadamer brought this historical situation of this interpreter into main discussion, into focus. Now, this literary application was carried further and elaborated by the succeeding critics later on. Now, the first and foremost important critic who formulate a theory based on the role of reader in the act of interpretation was Hans Robert Joss. Hans H-A-N-S, Robert R-O-B-E-R-T, Joss, J-A-U-S-S, not Joas, Joss, J-A-U-S-S. He was also influenced by Gadamer. He combined the insights from Russian formalism, which simply focuses on literary text and it ignores the history. It focuses on literary text. And social theories that focus on history and ignore literary text. So he combines both the things together. He proposed his concept of horizons of expectations. He proposed his concept of horizon of expectations as a set of criteria that readers use to judge literary texts. That how readers are judging the literary text. He gives a set of criteria through the concept of horizons of expectations. Who gives this concept? Hans Robert Joas. Now, this concept implies that readers bring many contexts to literary text and interpret them accordingly. Reader brings many contexts to literary texts and interpret according to that context that they capture, they get. But you will find out such interpretations change as context, as context change with the time, the interpretations also change according to the time. You cannot say that the interpretation cannot change. The interpretation also change according to the time. We need to understand this particular change when you're talking about any sort of understanding of any kind of text, literary text that we are talking about. Friends, literary works are not universal in their appeal and in their meaning. Please understand this, otherwise, you will have a misconception about it. The meaning is not fixed forever. Yours made contextualization and historicization, which is necessary to understand the meanings of the literary works. This is how you will find out, my friend, that how these people have tried to find out the meaning that is part of their understanding. Now, if you see very carefully, in this understanding of the whole process of reader response theories, we are going to talk about these reader oriented theories with certain ideas that we need to follow very carefully. Now, before moving to the major critique of the time, major thinkers of the time, in which we will find out Wolfgang Iser, Stanley Fish, Hans Robert Johannes. We'll find out various